Hello everyone, Eddie Smith back here again with Midwestern Marks. We got Matt Connolly again. He's going to be running for state representative in Iowa, so we thought we'd get together today and talk about Iowa-specific issues and then Matt's vision for the future of Iowa. So I'll let you go ahead, Matt. We want to talk about outsourcing, Medicaid, and how far right Iowa politics have basically been.
Yeah, so today we just kind of want to start with the outsourcing of jobs that has impacted my hometown of Dubuque. And so first, I guess I'll talk about the Dubuque meatpacking industry. The meatpacking company was a very big industry. The meatpacking company was in the 1950s. My grandpa actually worked for them. Heavily unionized job. One of the highest paid employers, or one of the highest paying employers in the city because of the unionization, and also it was one of the largest employers in the city. But with outsourcing deals through the 90s, the industry was just cut in half, and eventually the headquarters stayed in Dubuque, but the jobs got shipped overseas. And then actually the same thing just happened with Flex Steel. So Flex Steel was a furniture making company, I believe. And I actually had a friend who worked there, and all of their jobs got outsourced to China while the headquarters stayed here. So the corporate offices, they're fine. All of the bigwigs are going to be just all right. But my friend and several hundred employees got kicked out the door with $2,000 severance package, very minimal. And then finally, John Deere, same thing. Outsourcing jobs have just killed one of Dubuque's largest employers. So John Deere is still one of the city's largest employers, but it used to have many times more employees than it has right now. And outsourcing jobs have just absolutely killed the industry in Dubuque. And we are part of the industrial Midwest, Iowa is, and it's just very painful to see how outsourcing deals, bad trade deals have just killed the industrial Midwest, and especially Dubuque, because you go through the downtown area and you can just see empty factories everywhere. You see a crumbling industry, and it's just really sad to see.
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of liberals and Democrats, especially maybe in coastal places or in Washington, what they don't understand is that the Midwest has been ravaged by TPP and NAFTA. We've had tons of our jobs outsourced because of these free trade deals. So for people who don't know, essentially, Bill Clinton and I can't remember who wrote TPP and who wrote NAFTA, but it started with Clinton. They started doing all these free trade deals, so taking any tariffs off that were meant to keep jobs here. So companies can now use cheap labor in developing countries, and they can import those resources that are produced by the cheap labor here for much cheaper than paying American workers good paying unionized labor. And that's what's been happening since Reagan, and then especially since Clinton, is all our jobs have been going overseas. And what Trump did in 2016 was he went to these states where Hillary Clinton did not campaign at all, states like Iowa, states like Wisconsin, states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, and he said, I'm going to bring your jobs back. I'm going to tear up TPP and NAFTA. Now, Trump has not done that. Trump doesn't have an actual vision. Trump doesn't care about anyone but himself. But we are going to do that. So I'll let Matt, what would be your plan to increase wages in Iowa, and then also to increase the amount of good paying jobs we have?
Yeah, so I think right away we need to implement a $15 minimum wage. Now that would be scaled, so you'd work your way up there eventually, so it doesn't burden small businesses right away. I think this is very doable, and you look at different studies that show that actually increasing the minimum wage helps small businesses because people have more disposable income. They're able to work less hours because they don't need to work as much to make as much money. And because wages are only a small part of a company's expenses, even if they were to raise costs, it wouldn't be a significant amount. So even if prices did go up a little bit, the offsetting of the increasing in minimum wage would actually make the goods cheaper in the long run. So I think the minimum wage definitely needs to be increased. I think that would help would help 50% of Iowa workers. 50% of Iowa workers make less than $15 an hour. So that's like $30,000 a year, and it's a pretty solid wage. And the fact that half of workers in Iowa don't make that is just kind of sad. So I think that's something that we need to do right away. The other thing is, I like the idea of strengthening unions. And so Eddie kind of mentioned at the beginning that Iowa is very far to the right in terms of politics. And one example of this is our Supreme Court is very far to the right. So an example is in 2019, I believe, the Supreme Court of Iowa voted to cut the collective bargaining power of teachers in the state of Iowa. And my dad is a teacher, and so that kind of affects me personally, the fact that he can gather with his fellow teachers and petition to raise wages, get better benefits from their employer. It's just kind of sad. So I think that increasing access to unionization is also very important.
For sure, and where we're at, Dubuque is a union town. We were built on unions. And I actually hear old people from around this area say all the time, like, I used to vote Democrat when Democrats came from the union. And I think that's something that, the party has completely abandoned the working class, and to the Republicans who of course in Washington only serve their corporate donors, as they pretend to be for the working class. So I think a return to that would be really useful, and I think this idea that the left can't win working class voters is just a horrible idea and antithetical to everything that the left is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the party of workers, and I think that's awesome that you want to represent the unions. And then, so let's talk about one more thing that's affecting workers. You and me both know people who are rationing their insulin and who have gotten kicked off of Medicaid, including people going through college right now, drowning in student debt, working. Our friend Addison has 5 jobs, and he's barely on Medicaid. They're kicking people off Medicaid, they're slashing what it does. Meanwhile, the price of drugs like insulin are skyrocketing, and they finally got through a bill to lower insulin costs a little bit for seniors, which Trump has been bragging about, but obviously much more needs to be done. So how would you fight for more health care, I guess?
Mm-hmm. So I'm a very big proponent of Medicare for All, and I think that would immediately help people who are rationing insulin, don't have access to medical care. There are 87 million Americans that are either uninsured or underinsured, so there are 40 million uninsured people in America, which is just a crazy concept to me. You need health insurance to live. If you get injured or sick and you have to go to the doctor and you can't afford to go, you either don't go to the doctor and you don't get better, or you go and have to pay out of pocket. And so what Kim Reynolds, the Iowa governor, and Joni Ernst, our senator, have been doing is actually privatizing Medicaid. So they've been cutting the access. I think they lowered the limit that you can get into it. So a lot less people are on Medicaid right now and Medicare. And I think it also stems back to corruption too. So Joni Ernst, I think she got a fine because she took something like $100,000 from health insurance companies. And so because of Citizens United, you can see that once health insurance companies give her money, she does their bidding. She cuts Medicaid so that people have to go to these private insurers, boosting their profits. And so I think in addition to Medicare for All, overturning Citizens United would be a huge step to getting the corruption out of politics, getting this dark money, this that only hurts people. So I think Kim Reynolds also took a bunch of money from health insurance companies. And again, you can see, her policies are driven by her dark money, the money that she gets through these private insurers. So I think those kind of go hand in hand. Addie, do you have anything else to add to that one?
Yeah, no, I always think it's interesting when they're doing something like this, like trying to roll back Medicaid, or what Trump has done with deregulating OSHA. It's like even the smallest little protections that workers have fought for and earned for themselves or gained for themselves, like, all right, if you're poor, we're going to have this Medicaid system so you don't die if you get sick. even that, the ruling class is like, if it gets in the way of our money, they're going to fight to get rid of it. And it's the constant struggle between, the workers and between the owner, between private money. And I think it's about time that workers started fighting back and started not just fighting to strengthen our existing protections, but fighting for more, moving to Medicare for all, and all these things that we've been talking about. So I'm super pumped that you're here to do that, run for office, and let's win this.
Yeah. Just final thing, because Dubuque has such a rich history of unions, and like I said at the top, my grandpa was in the meatpacking union, which was one of the highest paying employers in the city. You can see that kind of direct correlation. I think that improving access to unions would definitely help people secure better benefits, better wages, and you can actually see that throughout the 1960s, unionization, participation, and wages were actually correlated, and once that dropped, the wages fell, and along with the unionization rates. So I think it's like 8 or 10% of people are unionized right now. The other thing is Medicare for all would actually help unions. So because I think 90%, that's just a approximation, but a lot of a union's power is actually going to arguing and bargaining for better health insurance for the people within the union. And so by having Medicare for all, by guaranteeing every single person health care, you can actually bargain for other stuff. You can bargain for better wages, you can bargain for better protections within the workplace, more democracy, etc. So that's, I think all of these issues kind of work in tandem. And so that's kind of my vision for politics.
For sure, I think a lot of everything stems from the union. That's where workers have their power. That's where they can organize, and of course, those who have the money and the wealth know that, which is why there's been a huge campaign to dismantle unions. And these people probably don't even know anything about unions, so we'll end it there. Thanks for watching.